Alondra Elisa Ramos, point of view. Beautiful, confident, humble, and challenging is what everyone in my pack calls me. As the daughter of the alpha of the white blood pack, I am trained in combat, both in wolf and human form. But all those years of training had gone down the drain with a massive attack on our pack. Houses were burned down. Women and children were slaughtered in front of my eyes, while our warriors were all falling to their death, one after the other. My once beautiful and serene pack is now turned into a bloodbath. It all started in the dead of night. As usual, I was up late and reading a few documents that needed to be submitted to my superior tomorrow. I work in the city as the editorial manager for a Fortune 500 company. My father wasn't very happy about the idea of me working in the city, but after a lot of pestering, he finally agreed. While I was concentrating on the paperwork, I heard a crash sound downstairs, which made me alert. 5 minutes passed by in silence when my bedroom door was barged open. Dad and Mom rushed in. "Alondra, you must leave the pack right now," Dad commanded. My heart started to race at an inhumane pace, and I got up from the bed and rushed to his side. "What happened, Dad?" "Our pack is under attack. Please leave here." "Immediately," he said. But I didn't want to leave my parents behind and run away like a coward. Both my parents' faces were etched with worry and fear. My mother was slightly trembling, and tears were streaming down her cheeks. "I will fight with you," I said, stubbornly, even though I have never really fought in a real battle, but I didn't have the heart to leave my pack members behind. "I order you, as your alpha, to leave from here immediately. Alondra Elisa Ramos." And just then, I heard screaming from downstairs. I was unable to defy my dad's alpha command, so I begrudgingly agreed to leave. "We promised to meet you at the other side of the pack border," Dad said, pulled me into a hug, and placed a long and reassuring kiss on my forehead, while Mom did the same. "I will take you outside the pack house, and after that, you should run towards the border, okay?" Dad asked me, and I nodded my head. We rushed downstairs, and when we were about to open the main door, it was broken inwards, and a group of warriors rushed in. Dad and Mom fought the majority of them while I killed a few too. But the number of enemies was too much to handle. A blood-curdling howl was heard, and I turned in the direction of my father to see him lying dead with his throat torn out. My heart nearly stopped, and my throat tightened. I ran towards him, but my mother pulled me away and pushed us both outside. "We must go," she mumbled, and we ran outside, but we were soon attacked by a group of warriors who were outside. Mom and I were fighting two different wolves, and I was so focused on trying to poke his eye. I didn't see the wolf that was coming from behind me. "Alondra," Mom yelled, and I looked behind to see she jumped in the way and the wolf tore her into pieces. I know that I had no chance of surviving here by fighting these wolves, so I did the next best thing that I could. I ran. "Find that girl and bring her here." I heard a strong voice command, and a chorus of "Yes, Alpha Alvarez" was followed. "Alondra." I turned around to see Beta Steele running towards me. "Thank God, you are alive," he said, and my eyes promptly started to water. "Uncle Steele." Dad, and Mom is dead," I muttered, and he pulled me into a warm hug. "I know," I heard the howl. "I will not let anything happen to you, Alondra," he whispered in my ear. "Come on, let's get moving," he said. I nodded my head, and we started to run into the forest, away from all the bloodshed and murder. The forest was tranquil in contrast to the war that was happening in the pack. "Alondra, move!" Beta Steele yelled and pushed me away from him, just as a wolf jumped on him. "Uncle Steele." "Alondra, run!" he yelled, but I didn't have the heart to leave him here. He soon changed into his brown wolf and started to fight with the wolf. He briefly turned in my direction and growled at me, and I left him alone with tears and ran deeper into the forest. The forest was dark since there was no moon today to light up my path, so I stumbled and fell on the roots of the trees a few times. But I didn't stop. I heard an agonizing howl vibrate from the forest, which momentarily flattered my steps, and I closed my mouth to prevent the scream. Uncle Steele is also dead. Everyone that I hold dear to me is now lying dead in that pack, and I am the only one to survive. Thoughts of suicide were constantly crossing my mind, but I didn't want to die a coward. I want to live and bring my pack back to glory and kill Alpha Alvarez for killing innocent lives. There she is. I heard a distant voice, and I picked up my pace and ran faster, but the wolves were gaining on me. I ran till I came to a stop near the forest clearing, and I walked further to see that it was a steep cliff. Where are you going to run now? A few warriors surrounded my exit, and I propelled back. I looked around me to see that more wolves had come, and I had no way out. They were taking slow and steady steps towards me while I took shaky steps backward till I came to a stop at the edge of the cliff. You have nowhere to run, one of them mocked, and I looked down at the dark cliff. I do rather die by jumping off this cliff than in these monsters' hands. So I took a deep breath and jumped. Alondra Elisa Ramos, point of view. Everything around me was dark while I was free. Falling, the air around me was making me float while gravity pulled me down at a fast rate. I know that it is not going to be a smooth landing, so I closed my eyes tight and counted down the seconds before I will reach the ground again. The impact was hard, but due to the adrenaline rush, my body was numb. Rocks formed bedding at the bottom of the cliff, and I hit my head hard and lost consciousness, thinking that I might finally get to meet my parents again. The sound of water was a lullaby to me, while the bright sunlight was disturbing my sleep. I groaned and opened my eyes to see that I was lying on the grass near a river. I looked around my surrounding, but I didn't know how I ended up there. My head was pounding like a drum. "Hey, who are you?" I heard a male voice, and I looked in the direction of the forest to see a man probably in his late 40s running in my direction. When he stopped in front of me, I stared at him confused. He had a long scar starting from his left eyebrow and ending just above his lips, and he was a very muscular man. "Where am I?" I asked him. "You seriously don't remember anything?" the man asked me, and I meekly shook my head. A few minutes passed by in silence before a smile broke out on his lips. "You are an Omega, and your Alpha sold you to me. But unfortunately, you ran away." This sent a shiver down my spine, and my eyes widened in shock. But in the bottom of my heart, something was telling me that he was lying. I tried to get up from the place and run away, but the guy took a firm grip on my shirt and pulled me. "Let's get going now," he said, and pulled me in the direction of the forest. While I struggled in his arms, he slapped me hard across the cheek before he continued to drag me. "You better come with me without making a fuss. If not, I will leave you here in this forest to starve to death or be eaten by an animal." The man threatened, and my entire body became cold. I know that what he is saying is true, so I quietly walked with him. I will think about an escape plan once we are out of this forest. That way I can get some help somewhere. We soon exited the forest, and he pushed me to walk toward a white Honda car that was parked at the curb. The car looked like it had seen better days, and another man was standing near the passenger seat with his back facing us. "Nicholas, start the car. We are leaving," the man growled, which made the guy turn around to face us, and he had a puzzled look on his face when he saw me. "Where did you find this chick, Dad?" Nicholas asked, while his scrunching glance looked at me from head to toe, and I tried to hide from him. "Doesn't matter at the moment. Start the car. We are going home." His dad ordered and opened the back seat and pushed me in, and he soon took a seat next to me. Soon Nicholas walked around and got into the driver's seat and started the car, and drove. The car smelled like sweat and cigarettes, which made me gag. But I made sure to not make any noise since I didn't want to get slapped again. We were on a car journey for more than an hour when we finally came to a stop in front of a rundown house. It was a 2-story house, with white paint peeling from its wall. "Let's get moving." The man roughly pulled me out of the car using my hand and dragged me into the house. I was too weak to fight him, so I just followed him upstairs, where he locked me in a room that had no windows, and it was pitch dark with only a small bed in the corner. "You will be staying here," he said, and then locked the room and left. I curled myself on the bed and closed my eyes, thinking of a way to escape. But for me to escape, I would need my stamina, so I willed myself to get some sleep. My eyes opened wide to the sound of the lock clicking, and I quickly got up from the bed and looked toward the door. The handle rattled a few times before the door opened, and Nicholas entered the room with a menacing smile on his face. I propelled backward. My heart was beating at an insane pace, and my palms started to sweat. "Oh, don't be afraid of me, darling. I came here to have some quality time with you," he said in a sickly, sweet voice. "Please, leave me alone," I stammered, but he only advanced. "Be a good girl and obey my orders," he said, and he gripped my hand in his. I screamed for help, slapped him, and kicked him, but he only got more violent. When he was about to tear my dress, someone pulled him away from me and slammed him to the wall. "Dad!" Nicholas yelled, and his father slapped him hard across his cheek. "Don't you dare ruin my business, Nicholas. Alpha Alvarez is looking for a surrogate, and she looks so beautiful. I have a feeling that I can sell her off to him for the highest price," he said, looking at me. "So, fuck off from here. Alondra, Elisa, Ramos, point of view." Nicholas glared at me once before he left the room, after I heard a room door open and close. His dad turned around to face me with the same smirk on his face. "Why don't you get some sleep? We have a big day tomorrow," he said, and I glared at him, but it looked like it didn't affect him one bit. He turned around and made his way to the door, and when he was about to close the door, he put his head inside and asked, "Are you a virgin?" I didn't know if I was or not, since I was not able to remember my name or my past either, so we just stared at each other. "Well, you better be a virgin, because if Alpha Alvarez finds out that you are not a virgin, then he will kill you right there," he warned me and slammed the door close. Everything that happened a few minutes ago was still playing in my head like a broken tape recorder, from my near escape to what that man said he would do to me. Sell me off to an alpha to become his surrogate is the last thing that I want to happen in my life. After losing my memory, I know that if I stay here any longer, I would be sold to this alpha to carry his pup. For some unknown reason, my blood started to boil whenever I heard Alpha Alvarez's name. It was like I have heard that name somewhere, and the anger within me was telling me that he was not a good person in my past life. I tried so hard to remember at least my name, but in the end, I gave up and went back to sleep. I woke up to the song of birds chirping outside and quickly got up and sat on the bed. Alpha Alvarez was the cruelest alpha in this country. He shows no mercy to anyone who crosses his path, and he is as emotionless as a rock. I didn't know how I remembered all this information, but I was thankful that I at least remembered something from my past life. And this was all the motivation that I needed to run away from this place. Because if I didn't want to be the mother to the children of a heartless alpha, I got up from the bed and opened the small door that was to the left, to see that it was a washroom that had a toilet and a small wash basin. I quickly did my morning routine and washed my hands and went back into the room. I know that I will never be able to fight off two fully grown men, so I will have to sneak out of the house without them knowing. I tried to twist the door handle, but it looks like it is locked, so I stepped back and examined the door. It was old, and it had holes in various places. While analyzing the lock, I noticed that it was rusted and not properly closed. So I took a deep breath and kicked the door a few times, and on my third kick, it opened. I quickly exited the house, praying that I didn't wake anyone in this house. I ran like this was the last day I am going to live. The neighborhood was deserted, and all the houses present there were abandoned. I desperately looked around to at least find one living soul who could help me, but the more I looked, the more disappointed I got. "There she is." I heard the familiar voice of the man, and I turned around to see that Nicholas and his father were chasing me. Both of them looked furious, and I know that if they catch me, they will torture me to death for trying to escape from them. so I willed my legs to run faster. Gradually, the scenery around me began to change. The abandoned houses around me were replaced with small stalls that were occupied by shop vendors, who were looking at me with pity. But no one came forward to help me, which made my heart tighten. How can people be so inhumane? Slowly, the place was beginning to get crowded, and it was harder for me to see Nicholas and Father among the masses of people. But I know that I can never stop and take a rest. I weaved through stores and passing cars. Some shouted insolent words at me, while others glared at me for disturbing their morning routine. The crowd was beginning to get thin, and that is when I saw a familiar man standing near a high-end restaurant. His back was facing me, but for some odd reason, I felt like I knew him from somewhere. So I ran faster towards him. And before I could come to a stop, the man turned around and took a few steps towards me, which made us collide, and when I was about to fall, he held me. "Alpha Alvarez, we are so sorry for this mishap." The man came to a stop next to me and addressed the man who was standing in front of me. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine when I heard this man's name. Alondra Elisa Ramos, point of view. I looked up at Alpha Alvarez. His stormy gray eyes were swirling with confusion, but I was able to see the danger that was lurking within them. I was soon broken out of my trance when my mind finally realized who this man really is. I pushed him away from me and looked at the three men in fear. The street was crowded, but no one dared to come forward and help me. While everyone was still in shock, I turned around and tried to run, but my right arm was soon caught in a firm grip and pulled back, which made me collide with a muscular, warm body. "Whoa, where are you going, in a hurry?" A baritone voice asked me, and I looked up to come face to face with a good-looking guy. He had a sharp jawline with reddish-pink lips that would make any woman want to devour on, and a pair of eyes that was like a hidden island with a lot of mysteries to uncover. "Beta Alexander," the man greeted, which made a smirk appear on the Beta's face. I looked in the direction of the man who was now glaring daggers at me for trying to run away in front of Alpha Alvarez. "How are you, Martin? I hope that you are not bringing your dirty business into our pack," the Beta asked in a joking tone, but there was a hint of warning hidden behind his voice. The man who kidnapped me, whose name I know now as Martin, shook his head. "I will never disobey Alpha Alvarez's command, Beta Alexander," he said, and then turned around to face the Alpha again. "Alpha, my son and I were going to meet you today regarding an offer," he said, which piqued Alpha Alvarez's interest. "What is it, Mr. Lucas?" he asked. Martin cleared his throat, and with a huge smile plastered on his face, he pointed in my direction. "This is an Omega, Alpha Alvarez, and she is also a virgin," he said, and I felt the anger rising within me again when Martin referred to me as if I was an object and not a living being. Alpha Alvarez looked me from head to toe, and his face morphed into disgust. "I would like to sell her to you for a desirable price, to be your surrogate, Alpha Alvarez." "How did you know that I am looking for a surrogate, Mr. Lucas?" Alpha Alvarez asked him. "News spreads faster than light, Alpha Alvarez. So, would you like to buy her?" he asked, and I stared at Martin in disgust. Even though I might have lost my memory, I know that selling a woman to someone is not legal, both in a social sense and a moral sense. "You want me to buy this Omega to be my surrogate, Mr. Lucas?" Alpha Alvarez asked in disgust. "Are you trying to humiliate me?" Alpha Alvarez growled, and Martin immediately bowed his head down and shook his head. "No, Alpha, but please consider this Omega. She is a virgin for sure. So what more can you ask?" He tried to persuade the Alpha, and even the Beta started to look at me from head to toe. "I think what Martin is saying is true, Alpha Alvarez. She looks beautiful, and with a little bit of grooming, she will be fit to be your surrogate," Beta Alexander said, and Alpha Alvarez took another look at me, this time a bit more deeply, which made me uncomfortable. "What you are saying is true also. Her eye color is one of a kind, orange with a hint of gold in them. My child will at least have beautiful eyes." Alpha Alvarez acknowledged, and this made Martin overly delighted, and he shook his head in agreement. Beta Alexander. Alpha Alvarez addressed his beta, who turned his attention to him. Pay Mr. Lucas what he asks for and send them off as soon as possible, he ordered, and the beta nodded his head. Thank you so much, Alpha Alvarez. Martin bowed down, and so did his son. Come with me, the beta said, and then walked away from us, followed by Martin Lucas, while his son Nicholas stood there for a few seconds longer and glared at me before he too left. I felt like my heart sank to the bottom of my stomach. Being left alone with Alvarez made the fear within me intensify tenfold. A cold hand touched my shoulder, which made a shiver run down my spine, and I was turned around not so gently to face Alpha Alvarez. My entire body started to tremble at our close prolixity, while he pinched both my cheeks, and his hands slowly traveled down to my parted lips. You better be obedient, he mumbled, and his cold air made goosebumps appear on my hands and legs. My heart was racing at an inhumane rate, and my throat felt dry. All my instincts were screaming at me to run away from him, but I know that I have nowhere to go now, after hearing that this was Alpha Alvarez's territory. No wonder. No one came to help me from this monster. His eyebrows scrunched when he noticed my trembling figure. Why are so scared of me? This was the first time that he spoke to me without throwing an insult. A genuine question that I was afraid to answer. Alondra, Elisa, Ramos, point of view. Alpha Alvarez was waiting for me to reply, and from the tapping of his foot and opening and closing of his fist, I know that he was getting impatient, and he was also getting annoyed at my lack of response. So I slowly lifted my head and looked at him directly in the eye. My head started to pound like a drum, and for a moment I felt like I lost my vision and was transported into a different realm. I was standing in front of a clearing. There were a lot of houses surrounding me, which were all being burned down by people, and there were some houses where people were still inside. A mother and her daughter, and they were screaming to be let out. My stomach twisted at the cruelty of these people. I tried to scream for help, but I felt like I lost my voice, so I moved farther toward a huge glass and wood house, which was the only place that was not on fire. Wolves were fighting with one another. Warriors, men, women, and children were being slaughtered in front of my eyes, and when I tried to reach out to help, I felt like something was preventing me from doing so. Hey, what happened? I was broken out from that vision when Alpha Alvarez was abruptly shaking me, and I looked at him one last time before I fainted. Just before I completely lost consciousness, I heard Alpha Alvarez mutter under his breath, "What a weak Omega. How am I going to deal with this?" This statement hurt me a lot, but I know now that I will not be able to do anything against him. Beep, beep. My eyelids felt like it was made out of concrete while my body was aching, as if I had just run a 10-mile marathon. I groaned and tried to open my eyes again, and after a few attempts, I opened them to bright lights above me. So I closed my eyes and waited till I adjusted to the brightness. I was in a hospital bed, and there were various machines surrounding me. I looked down at myself to see that I was wearing a clean sundress, and I smelled like disinfectant soap. I slowly got up and sat against the bed, took the glass of water that was placed on the table next to me, and drank everything in one gulp. Click. I looked towards the door to see it slowly open, and Beta Alexander entered the room with a bouquet of fresh flowers and a brown paper bag in his other hand. "You are finally up," he said in a cheerful voice, and a smile instantly lit up my face. Beta Alexander was full of positive energy around him, which makes the people around him happy, and his character is in total contrast with that of his Alpha Alvarez. While Beta Alexander makes me feel comfortable around his presence, Alpha Alvarez makes me think to run away to an unknown village. Beta Alexander arranged the bouquet in the empty vase on the table and took a seat on the chair that was opposite my bed. "Well, the doctor examined you a while ago," he stated, "and she said that you are as healthy as a horse. The reason you fainted was that you had nothing in your stomach." Beta Alexander explained and placed the brown paper bag on my lap. I bought you something to eat, he said, and I quickly opened the bag to see there was a puff pastry and a chocolate cake. What are you looking at? Eat, he emphasized, and I devoured both foods in under 5 minutes. So, how was it? Beta Alexander asked me. It was good. Thank you so much for that, Beta Alexander, I said, and his eyes widened in surprise, and a smile formed on his face. Oh my, you can talk. I thought that you are mute, he said, and I shook my head. Well, I am happy, because I don't think I want my future alpha to be mute too, he said, and crossed his finger, which made a smile appear on my face. Beta Alexander was a very jovial person, and I was happy that I at least got someone to talk to. We were both laughing at a joke that he said when the room door opened and in ended Alpha Alvarez. He had an expressionless look on his face, and he looked at me from head to toe. You seem to be very healthy now, he said, and I nodded my head. I am feeling a little better now, Alpha Alvarez, I asserted. Then let's get going. We don't have to waste any more time here, he said. Alondra Elisa Ramos, point of view. Whenever Alpha Alvarez comes into my presence, I feel like he brings with him a cloud of darkness that absorbs all the blissful moments that were present in this room. But his presence also is a stark reminder of why I am needed by him. To be his surrogate, even though I never consented to it. But on top of that, I am also in a confused state of mind. I feel like there is a strong energy, a strength within me that is begging to be unleashed, but it is being prevented by a barrier. My yearning to find my memory back, to know my identity, and my family is pushing me to take reckless decisions. Furthermore, I don't want to be a surrogate because I know the painful moments associated with it. I will never be able to see my child again. I will never be able to cherish, love, or care for him or her. Even though many girls are waiting in queues to become the mother of the most powerful alpha on this continent, that idea doesn't appease me. So I got up from the bed and took slow but steady steps toward Alpha Alvarez. His eyebrows frowned in confusion at my act of bravery. I kept my face void of any emotions, but within me I was trembling like a leaf. Alpha Alvarez, I know that you want a surrogate, and I believe that for your status and power, women are waiting outside just to serve you, and I believe that I am not the right person. I didn't know where this bravery came from, but for once I felt my mind and heart at ease. It was like I was in touch with my former self. Alpha Alvarez's eyes changed color from hazelnut brown to pitch black. His breathing became heavy, and I saw his muscles tighten. You are exceptionally brave to speak to me that way, Omega. But you must have figured out now that I don't play by anyone's rules other than my own. He sneered at me, and for every word that came out of his mouth, I felt his tone get darker and darker, and I was not able to hold my brave facade anymore. My hands and feet started to sweat. My pupils dilated, and my body began to shiver at our proximity. But Alpha Alvarez, please let me go. If more money is the issue, then I will pay you twice as much as what you paid Mr. Martin Lucas. Just give me some time. Just please let me leave. I begged him, my eyes watered, and I didn't know what more to do. My heart was palpitating at an inhumane rate, while Alpha Alvarez stared at me with a look of indifference. He slowly lifted his hand, and I shut my eyes close, fearing that he was about to slap me. But the ice-cold touch on my chin made me open my eyes again. He gently lifted my chin so that we were both having direct eye contact. I think you don't seem to understand the situation here, he began. My time is priceless, and I bet you can never pay for all the time that I will lose if I let you go now. So let me give you 2 options, and you decide which one you want to proceed with, he said. And a ray of hope blossomed in my heart. You can either die in my hands for trying to run away from your duties, or you can be my surrogate, give birth to my child, and leave my pack once and for all. It is that simple. he said with a smirk on his face, even though none of the options that he gave me sounded simple to me. There was no way out of this mess. You have 2 hours to decide what you want to do, he said, and stepped back, giving the warm air around the room to heat me up. He gave me one more deadly stare before he turned on his heels and left the room. I hope you take the right decision. His words echoed in the hallway, and my knees buckled up, and I fell to the ground. Beta Alexander gave me a pitiful look before he left the room after softly closing the door behind him. The doctor's report came in a few hours back, Alpha Alvarez, and she said that the Omega is healthy and the perfect candidate to become your surrogate. These were the parting words I heard the Beta speak to Alpha Alvarez outside the room. Slowly the teardrops flowed down my cheeks. I was helpless in this situation, both physically and mentally. If you are in a do-or-die situation, the first thing you should try to do is talk your way out of the situation. And if that doesn't work, find a way to escape from that place. I wiped the tears using the back of my hand and got up from the floor. Beta Alexander didn't lock the door behind him, and I have 2 hours in my hand to think about what I should be doing. So why not form my own option and escape within this given time frame? Alondra Elisa Ramos. Point of view. I wiped away the tears from my cheeks and looked around my room. I know that Alpha Alvarez most likely would not have admitted me into a human hospital. Likewise, I don't think he had the time to take me to his pack hospital either, so I should be safe in getting out of this place. I made my way to the window and saw that I was on the first floor, and it was not a big fall from there. I looked at the door one last time and tried with all my strength to open the window, but it didn't bulge open. Click. My heart leaped to my throat, and my eyes widened in fear of being caught at the last minute. I turned around to see that it was Beta Alexander. He walked inside the room and gently closed the door as if I was not planning to escape a few seconds back. He stood right in front of the bed, crossed his arms, and looked at me with a calm demeanor. You do know that fall will make you break your ankle if your landing was wrong, right? He asked me while I stared at him like a deer caught in headlights. He let out a loud sigh and came and stood right in front of me, giving me and the window one last look. He pulled the window in one sleek motion that it opened. I was shocked at his behavior and expected him to mind-link his Alpha any minute now and inform him about my escape. You can leave, Omega. I will not inform about your escape to Alpha Alvarez till he finds out, and by then you will be long gone, he reassured me. The atmosphere descended into an eerie silence. My thought was flickering like a dead bulb as to whether I should trust him or not. He extended his hand for me to take, and I placed my trembling hands on his, and with his help I was hoisted up to the window still. Your armory reports just came in. This information piqued my interest. The doctor told me that you are suffering from temporary memory loss due to a hard impact on your head that you suffered. She believes that you might gain your memory, but that is not certain, and I am sorry that you are facing this issue, and I have a feeling that you are leaving Alpha Alvarez to find your lost identity. Beta Alexander asked me. Yes, I replied, and he nodded his head before he turned his attention to the vast forest outside. And I will warn you to not take such a risk. You have no idea who Alpha Alvarez truly is. This statement made me shiver, and I looked at him waiting for him to elaborate on his sentence. The calm look on his face now vanished. His eyebrows frowned in concentration, and his jaw was set. He turned around to look at me again, his eyes clearly telling me that this risk is not worth taking. Alpha Alvarez is called the Cold Alpha among the werewolves, and he didn't get that name just because he doesn't display any emotions, but because he would go to any means to get what he wants, no matter what it costs. What do you mean? There was this one girl that he always wanted. People called her the epitome of beauty, and she was an Alpha's daughter, and Alpha Alvarez wanted her, so he went to speak to the Alpha, her father. He paused and looked outside again. After a lot of discussions, her father refused to give his daughter to Alpha Alvarez, and this aggravated him. A few weeks after the failed discussion, Alpha Alvarez attacked that pack. We murdered everyone there. My heart sank to the pit of my stomach, while I felt pity and fear brewing within me when I heard what Alpha Alvarez did. This only portrays that he is merciless, and I concluded that he must have lost his soul a long time ago to be this heartless. What happened to the girl? Did he find her? I asked, and the beta shook his head. This made my heart burn, and the thoughts of a dead girl kept playing in my head. He killed her. No, we didn't find her in her pack. We searched everywhere for her, but it was like she just vaporized in the air. There was no trace of her scent, and no one knew where she went, if she was even alive or dead. Beta Alexander concluded, if you can behave, then there will not be a reason for Alpha Alvarez to kill you. You become his surrogate and give birth to his child. The sooner you can leave this pack without a worry of getting killed. I will even persuade Alpha Alvarez to let you leave. You can trust me about that. Beta Alexander said, and I only saw the truth in his eyes. But I didn't answer him. I was still having conflicting thoughts about this arrangement. Beta Alexander stood there for a little longer before he moved aside to leave the room. Remember that the entire hospital is surrounded by our warriors, so the next time you try to escape, they will kill you on sight, and I will not be able to come fast enough to save you. He gave me a final warning before he left the room. Alondra Elisa Ramos, point of view. My mind was a mess. Beta Alexander's words were ringing like a warning bell inside me, but there was a silver of truth in his words. I know that Alpha Alvarez will be anticipating my escape after my bold speech a few hours back, so now will not be the best time to run away from here. I continued to pace back and forth in the room, trying to formulate a plan to run away from Alpha Alvarez before he makes me his surrogate. Knock, knock. I stopped pacing and looked at the door with my eyes wide open. A few seconds after the knock, the door creaked open, and a beautiful middle-aged nurse walked inside with a bag in her hand. "How are you feeling now, dear?" the nurse asked me in a gentle voice. "I am feeling a lot better except for the occasional pounding in my head," I answered, and she nodded her head and walked in further. Suddenly an obscure plan formed in my head. If this nurse is a werewolf, then I can tell her that Alpha Alvarez has kidnapped me and asked for her help to escape from this place undetected. I discreetly smelled the air around us and realized that she was human, and my hope deflated like a balloon. I can never explain the dilemma that I am currently in to a human. The least she will think is that I have grown disillusioned after the severe impact that I experienced on my head. "That will be there till you get your memory back," she reassured me. "Anyway, Mr. Alvarez told me to escort you downstairs. So shall we go?" she asked me, and I begrudgingly nodded my head. "And before we go," she extended the bag my way, and I stared at it in suspicion before I took it in my hand. "These were the clothes that you were wearing when you came in. Since it was extremely torn, I changed you into a dress that we took from the lost and found. And your clothes are in that bag," she said, and I thanked her for her kind gesture. My eyes watered at her kindness. I discreetly scanned the hallway that we walked through to see that it was swarming with werewolves. Everyone was cautiously looking at every step that I make, which made my heart start to race in fear, and my hands became clammy with sweat. As I predicted, my chances of escape were slim, and the only option for me to do right now is to wait till they lost their focus and believe that I will not try to escape. When we reached the lobby, I saw Beta Alexander leaning against the receptionist's desk with a stoic look on his face. "Mr. Alexander," the nurse spoke, which made him turn around to face her. "Your sister is good as new, but please make sure that she doesn't fall off a flight of staircase again," the nurse warned, and he gave her a charming smile and a nod. "I will be extra cautious from here on." "Thank you so much, nurse," he said, and she nodded her head and told me to take care again. She left us to continue her work. "Sir, your card." The receptionist spoke, and Beta Alexander turned around and took his card, and then we made our way outside. A couple of moments later, a black Mercedes. Benz pulled up to the entrance, and a warrior got out of the car and slightly bowed his head at Beta Alexander. "Come on, let's get going, Omega," Beta Alexander said, and he placed his hand on the small of my back and guided me towards the back seat door. "You can go inside and sit. Alpha Alvarez is waiting for you at the back," Beta Alexander said, and this made me take a screaming halt in my steps. Being his surrogate is bad enough, and I don't want to sit beside him for the rest of the journey to his pack. Beta Alexander opened the door and waited till I got inside, while I was nervously shuffling from one foot to the other. I stood rooted to my spot, thinking of an excuse that I could say to avoid sitting with him. Maybe I can ask Beta Alexander if I could sit in the front seat next to him. Beta Alexander slightly pushed me further towards the car when I saw the silhouette of Alpha Alvarez. His sharp jawline was clutched, and his fingers were impatiently tapping on his lap. "What are you waiting for, Omega? Get inside the damn car." Alpha Alvarez's shape words pierced my skin like a pin, and he glared at me. "Don't waste my time here by standing there like an idiot. Get inside," he yelled so that no passers-by could hear us. I flinched at his sharp voice and bowed my head, and with shaky legs, I got inside the vehicle. As soon as I was seated, the Beta closed the door and made his way to the driver's seat, and soon we were off the hospital ground and on the highway. A thick, tense silence engulfed the entire atmosphere in the car, and sadly there was no music to at least ease the painful silence. Every time Beta Alexander took a sharp turn, I automatically moved slightly closer to Alpha Alvarez, which made me shoot over closer to my side of the door, and I was pressed against the door like a lizard, praying for this journey to end soon. "Why don't you open that door and just jump off the moving car and let all the other vehicles run over you?" Alpha Alvarez said sarcastically, which made heat rush up my cheeks, and I moved slightly away from the door and sat up straighter. I didn't dare meet his gaze not to reply to that comment. After a while, I looked up again, and I saw Beta Alexander giving me a pleasant smile through the rearview mirror, and I reciprocated his smile. And when I turned my attention away, I noticed the clenched fists of Alpha Alvarez. "So, the doctor said that you are ready to get pregnant, right? Alondra Elisa Ramos, point of view." My heart nearly stopped, and my throat tightened at his question. I didn't know what I should tell him. If I tell him that the doctor said that I am ready to conceive a baby, then will he have sex with me immediately after we go to his pack? But if I even deny it, I know that he will not believe me because my facial expressions will give it away that I am lying. I prayed to the moon goddess to get me out of this situation as soon as possible, but I know that my prayers won't be answered as soon as I wanted them. I remembered something that Beta Alexander warned me about while we were walking toward the car, and I can't still get that conversation off my head. "Beta Alexander, can I ask you something?" I began while walking beside him, and his steps momentarily flattered. He looked at me and nodded his head for me to go on. I want to know if I am the first surrogate that Alpha Alvarez has chosen." I asked him meekly, and this made him come to a complete stop. Beta Alexander turned round and looked at me with a serious look on his face. His eyes have various emotions swirling within, and at last he sighed and shook his head. "I think you deserve to know a little about what you are going to face in the next whole year," Beta Alexander said. There were 3 other women who came to Alpha Alvarez willingly to become his surrogate, and since we did advertise to every pack in this continent that Alpha Alvarez is searching for a surrogate, it was bound to happen. They were all very beautiful women, intelligent, and belonging to high-ranking families in their pack. Then, why didn't one of them give him an heir? Alpha Alvarez had only one condition to whoever wanted to become his surrogate, and that is, the woman should be a virgin. And if she had a mate, she should have his consent before coming to meet Alpha Alvarez. "That sounds like a pretty reasonable condition to me," I said, and he let out a sarcastic smile, which greatly confused me. "It is, but But all these three women lied about being a virgin. When Alpha Alvarez found that information out the first night, he dragged the woman outside to the front porch of his house and without a second thought snapped her neck. That is how he killed all of them. This information made me take a few large gulps, but I still felt like my throat was as dry as the Sahara Desert. Alpha Alvarez hates when you lie to him straight up his face. So, I hope that you don't repeat the same mistake as the previous woman under any circumstances. Beta Alexander gave me a slight warning, and I involuntarily nodded my head. My tongue felt heavy, which prevented me from answering Alpha Alvarez's question, and when I turned around to face him, I saw him tapping his fingers on his lap, and his face was contorted into a frown. When he was about to open his mouth to say something, Beta Alexander spoke from the front seat. I did speak to the doctor about it, and she said that the Omega is ready, he said, and this made Alpha Alvarez turn his attention back to his Beta. So, should I make the arrangements for tonight? Beta Alexander asked, looking at Alpha Alvarez through the rearview mirror, and he nodded his head. Get her cleaned up and take her to my room at night, and make sure that there are no issues, because I don't want to waste my time finding another surrogate again. I have already lost enough time. Alpha Alvarez mumbled, and Beta Alexander nodded his head and turned his attention back onto the road. My hands started to tremble at this proposition. I didn't know what I can do. There was no way out right now. I will never be able to leave this place if I happen to get pregnant. I felt my heartbeat gradually increase till it was pounding against my rib cage. The air around me started to get warm, even though the air conditioner was on high. Beads of precipitation formed on my forehead, and my hands started to sweat just by thinking about what is going to happen to me in a few hours. I didn't have any memory of my past life, so I have no idea if I am still a virgin or not. And after hearing Beta Alexander tell me about what happened to the previous three surrogates who lied to Alpha Alvarez, a cold shiver consumed me. If I happen not to be a virgin, then I will meet the same fate as the previous women, and all my hopes of finding my memory and my identity will be lost in thin air. I will die in confusion, not knowing who I am. The beating of my heart was like a loud drum to my ear, and from the frowning look and the curled fist of Alpha Alvarez, I know that he must be hearing it too, due to the sensitive hearing that werewolves possess and his nose scrunched up in disgust. I have heard before that alpha wolves are able to sense and smell the fear from their opponents or other werewolves due to the change in their scent, and from his facial expression, I think he is able to sense mine at the moment. Beta Alexander, Alpha Alvarez growled while he directed his piercing stone, cold eyes at me, and I slightly cowered away from him. Turn off the air conditioner and lower down all the windows. The stench in this car is suffocating me, he said, glaring at me, and my face heated up on embarrassment. Sure, Alpha, Beta Alexander said, and he turned off the air conditioner and lowered down all the windows.